Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he walked through the dusty corridors of Port 7, one of the roughest spaceports on the edge of human space. His cargo hauler had broken down 3 weeks ago, and the repair costs were more than he could afford. Without a ship, he had no way to make money. Without money, he could not fix his ship. It was a problem with no easy answer. The spaceport was filled with all kinds of beings from across the galaxy. Humans mixed with tall, blue-skinned Zanari traders and short, furry Kelpian merchants. The air smelled of engine fuel, exotic spices, and things Jake did not want to think about. He had been walking around all morning, looking for work, or maybe a cheap ship he could buy with his last few credits. That was when he saw the alien standing next to the most beautiful starship Jake had ever seen. The ship was sleek and silver, about twice the size of Jake's old cargo hauler. Its hull curved in smooth lines that seemed to flow like water. Strange blue lights pulsed along its sides in patterns Jake had never seen before. The design was unlike anything made by humans or any other species he knew about. The alien standing beside it looked nervous. He was about Jake's height, but much thinner, with gray skin and large black eyes. His hand shook as he held a datapad, and he kept looking around as if he expected trouble. Jake walked over slowly. He had learned not to seem too eager when making deals at places like Port 7. "Nice ship," Jake said, trying to sound casual. The alien jumped slightly. "Oh yes, very nice, very fast, very reliable." His voice was high and shaky. "You want to buy? Good price." "Very good price." Jake raised an eyebrow. In his experience, when someone said very good price without being asked, it usually meant trouble. But the ship was incredible. Even from the outside, he could see technology that was years ahead of anything humans had built. "How much?" Jake asked, though he was sure it would be way more than he could afford. The alien looked around nervously again, then leaned closer. 50,000 credits. Jake nearly choked. A ship like this should cost at least 500,000 credits, maybe more. 50,000. What's wrong with it? Nothing wrong, the alien said quickly. Ship is perfect. Just need to sell fast. Very fast. Why? The alien's large eyes darted around the spaceport again. Personal reasons. Family, business, need credits now. Jake studied the alien's face. He was definitely scared of something, but that did not mean the ship was bad. Maybe he owed money to the wrong people. Maybe his family was in trouble. In places like Port 7, people sold things cheap when they were desperate. "Can I look inside?" Jake asked. The alien nodded quickly and led him up the ship's ramp. Inside was even more impressive than the outside. The corridors were wide and clean, with soft lighting that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Everything looked new and advanced. They walked to the cockpit, and Jake's jaw dropped. The pilot's seat was surrounded by displays and controls that seemed to be made of pure light. When Jake sat down, the chair adjusted perfectly to his body, and the controls moved closer to his hands. "Ship has artificial intelligence," the alien explained. "Very smart. Well, we'll help with everything." As if on cue, a pleasant female voice spoke from hidden speakers. "Hello, I am Zara, the ship's AI. Welcome aboard the Starwind." Jake looked around in amazement. AI systems this advanced were rare and expensive. Most cargo haulers like him could not afford even basic AI helpers. The ship is equipped with advanced navigation, life support, and defense systems. Zara continued. All systems are functioning at optimal levels. Jake stood up and looked at the alien. "Are you really selling this so cheap?" The alien wrung his hands. "Please, I tell truth. Need to leave planet today. Ship is good. You buy. You will be happy." Jake walked around the cockpit, running his hands over the smooth surfaces. His old ship was falling apart, held together, with spare parts and hope. This ship was like something from a dream. But he had learned to be careful about dreams that seemed too good to be true. "I need to think about it," Jake said. The alien's eyes went wide with panic. "No time to think. Must sell now. 40,000 credits. Final price." Jake felt his heart racing. Even if there was something wrong with the ship, 40,000 credits was nothing for something like this. He had exactly 42,000 credits to his name, his entire life savings. "I have a friend who knows ships," Jake said. "Me. Bring him to look at it." "No time," Keelan said, grabbing Jake's arm. "Port security making inspection soon. Keelan's ship must be gone before then." That explained the rush. The alien was probably smuggling something, or maybe the ship was stolen. But Jake had seen the registration papers, and they looked real. Even if they were fake, once he owned the ship legally, it would not matter. Jake thought about his broken cargo hauler sitting in the repair bay. He thought about the jobs he could not take because he had no ship. He thought about the bills piling up in his small apartment. 40,000, Jake said. "Cash transfer, right now." The alien nearly collapsed with relief. Yes, thank you. You make good choice." 10 minutes later, Jake was the owner of the most advanced starship he had ever seen. The alien had transferred all the registration papers and codes, grabbed his payment, Kate, and disappeared into the crowd so fast that Jake barely saw him go. Jake sat in the pilot seat of his new ship, still not quite believing it was real, though. Starwind was his now, all his. "Sarah," he said to the AI, "run a full system check." "Certainly, Jake. All systems are functioning perfectly. Shall I prepare for departure?" Jake smiled for the first time in weeks. "Yeah, let's get out of here." As the Starwind lifted off from Port 7, Jake felt like the luckiest man in the galaxy. He had no idea that his luck was about to get much more complicated. 3 days after leaving Port 7, Jake was starting to think he had made the best decision of his life. The Starwind flew like a dream through hyperspace, covering distances that would have taken his old ship weeks to travel. The cargo hold was filled with high-value medical supplies bound for the Kepler colony. A job that would pay enough to cover his expenses for months. Jake was in the cockpit, enjoying a cup of coffee while watching the swirling colors of hyperspace through the view screen, and everything went wrong. Red warning lights began flashing throughout the ship, and alarms started blaring. The smooth hum of the engines turned into a grinding whine that made Jake's teeth hurt. "Sarah, what's happening?" Jake shouted over the noise. "Hyperspace storm detected," the AI replied, her voice calm despite the chaos. "All ships in the area are advised to drop out of hyperspace immediately." Jake had heard of hyperspace storms, but had never been caught in one. They were rare and dangerous, capable of tearing apart ships that stayed in hyperspace too long during the disturbance. "Drop us out now," Jake ordered, gripping his seat as the ship shook violently. The Starwind fell out of hyperspace with a bang that echoed through the hull. Jake was thrown forward in his seat as the ship spun wildly through normal space. Through the view screen, he could see a massive wall of energy crackling with lightning-like discharges. The storm was enormous, stretching for thousands of miles in every direction. "Damage report," Jake said, trying to catch his breath. "Multiple system failures," Sarah reported. "Power grid is damaged. Life support is running on backup power. Several sections of the ship have lost pressure." Jake unbuckled himself and ran toward the engine room. The corridors were dark except for emergency lighting, and he could hear the hiss of escaping air from somewhere deeper in the ship as he worked his way through the damaged sections, checking systems and sealing hole breaches. He noticed something strange. One of the sealed compartments that he had never been able to open was now cracked open, with sparks coming from his control panel. Jake had tried to access this area before, but Zara had always told him It was just storage space that was locked for safety reasons. Now, with the ship's power systems failing, the magnetic locks had released. Jake found a crowbar in the tool kit and pried the heavy door open. Inside was a room he had never seen before, filled with equipment he did not recognize. In the center of the room was a large cylindrical chamber, made of some kind of clear material. Inside the chamber was a woman. Jake's heart nearly stopped. She appeared to be human, but something about her was different. Her skin had a slight blue tint, and her hair was silver white, flowing around her face as if she were underwater. She was beautiful in a way that made Jake forget to breathe for a moment. Warning lights were flashing on the chamber's control panel, and Jake could hear a steady beeping that was getting faster. He did not understand the alien writing on the displays, but he could tell that whatever was keeping the woman alive was failing Zara. Jake called out, "I need you down here now. There's someone in a stasis pod." "That is not possible," Zara replied. "There are no life forms aboard this ship except for you." "Well, you're wrong. Get down here and help me figure out how to save her." Jake studied the control panel desperately. The beeping was getting faster, and some of the lights were changing from green to red. He did not need to understand the language to know that red lights meant trouble. The woman's eyes suddenly opened. Jake stumbled backward in surprise. Her eyes were large and violet, unlike any color he had seen in human eyes. She looked around in confusion, then focused on Jake. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. "Don't try to talk," Jake said, even though he was not sure she could understand him. "I'm going to get you out of there." Jake found what looked like an emergency release button and pressed it. The chamber filled with mist, then slowly opened with a soft hiss. The woman collapsed forward, and Jake caught her in his arms. She was lighter than he expected. Her skin felt cool to the touch. She tried to speak again, and this time Jake heard her voice. She was speaking in a language he had never heard before, musical and flowing like water. "Zara, can you translate what she's saying?" After a moment, Zara's voice came through the speakers, but she sounded different somehow, more formal. She says her name is Lyra. She is asking where she is and how long she has been asleep. Jake helped Lyra sit up against the wall. She looked weak but alert, her strange violet eyes studying his face with intelligence. "Tell her she's safe," Jake said. "Tell her she's on my ship, and I found her in this room." Zara translated, and Lyra responded with a longer stream of words. Her voice grew stronger as she spoke, and Jake could hear something like authority in her tone. "She says she is Princess Lyra of the Asterian Empire." Zara translated. "Ake was placed in emergency stasis when her home world was attacked. She wants to know what year it is and if her people survived." Jake felt his world shift. Princess, Empire. He had bought a cargo ship, not a royal escape pod. "Tell her it's 2387 Terran calendar." I don't know anything about her people or what happened to them." When Zara translated this, Lyra's face went pale. She spoke again, her voice filled with sadness. "She says that means she has been asleep for 43 years, Zara reported. "Her empire is gone. Everyone she knew is dead." Jake watched as tears rolled down Lyra's cheeks. He had never felt so helpless. Here was someone who had lost everything, and he had no idea how to comfort her. "Tell her I'm sorry," Jake said softly. "Tell her she's not alone anymore." Lyra looked at him when Zara translated, and something passed between them. She reached out and touched his hand, speaking quietly. "She says that by awakening her from emergency stasis, you have become her protector, according to ancient Asterian law." Zara translated. "She says you are now bound together until death." Jake stared at Lyra, not sure if he had understood correctly. Bound together. "What does that mean?" "It means," Zara said, and Jake could swear he heard amusement in the AI's voice. That you are now married, Jake Morrison. 2 weeks had passed since Jake found Lyra in the stasis pod. She had recovered quickly from her long sleep, and Jake was amazed at how fast she learned to use the ship's systems. Her violet eyes seemed to see patterns in the technology that Jake could not understand, and her fingers moved over the controls like she was playing music. Jake had also learned that being married by alien law was more complicated than he had thought. Lyra treated him with respect, but there was a distance between them. She was a princess, and he was just a cargo hauler from Earth. Sometimes he caught her looking at him with curiosity, as if she were trying to figure out what kind of person he really was. They were delivering their cargo to the Kepler colony when the first attack came. Jake was in the cockpit, preparing to drop out of hyperspace, when Zara's voice filled the air with urgency. Jake, I am detecting 3 ships following US. They are not responding to communication attempts. Pirates? Jake asked, though he had a feeling it was something worse. Known. However, their ships are equipped with military-grade weapons. Lyra came running into the cockpit. Over the past 2 weeks, she had learned enough English to communicate without Zara translating everything. They found me, she said, her face pale with fear. Who found you? Bounty hunters. There are people who would pay much money for an Asterian princess, even from a dead empire. Jake's blood went cold. How did they know you're here? Stasis. Pod sent a signal when it opened. I thought the transmitter was broken, but maybe it worked long enough. The ship shuddered as laser blasts hit their shields. Jake grabbed the controls and pushed the engines to full power, but the attacking ships were faster than anything he had ever seen. Jake, Lyra said, moving to a control panel he had never used before. May I? Jake nodded, too busy flying to ask questions. Lyra's hands danced over the alien controls, and suddenly the star wind changed. The ship moved differently, responding to Jake's commands like it was reading his mind. The engines hummed with new power, and displays he had never seen before lit up around the cockpit. What did you do? Jake asked, as he spun the ship through a series of turns that should have been impossible. I activated the ship's true systems, Lyra said. Age. This ship was built for my family. It has capabilities that are hidden unless an Asterian Royale is aboard. Jake felt the ship surge forward with incredible speed. They left the attacking ships behind, so fast that they disappeared from the sensors in seconds. But Jake knew this was only the beginning. Over the next few days, more ships appeared. Word had spread that Princess Lyra was alive, and every bounty hunter and mercenary in the sector was looking for them. Jake found himself learning to fight battles in space, something he had never expected to do as a cargo hauler. Lyra taught him how to use the ship's advanced weapons. The Starwind had guns that could disable other ships without destroying them, and defensive systems that could bend light to make them nearly invisible. Working together, they managed to escape every attack, but Jake could see the strain on Lyra's face. Why don't we just find somewhere safe to hide? Jake asked one evening as they sat in the ship's small dining area, sharing a meal. Lyra looked down at her food. There is nowhere safe. The person hunting me will not stop until I am dead or captured. Who is hunting you? Lyra's violet eyes filled with old pain. His name is Corax. He was once a general in our military, but he wanted power for himself. He led the attack that destroyed my world and killed my family. He thinks I have information that could threaten him. Do you? Lyra nodded slowly. I know the location of other Asterian survivors. If Corax finds them, he will kill them all. Jake reached across the table and took her hand. This was the first time he had touched her since the day he found her, and he felt a strange warmth pass between them. Then we make sure he doesn't find him. Lyra looked surprised. You would risk your life for people you have never met. I would risk my life for you, Jake said, then felt his face turn red. He had not meant to say that out loud. Lyra studied his face for a long moment. "Ah, you are not what I expected in a husband," she said softly. "What did you expect? Someone who married me for power or money? Someone who would try to control me?" She squeezed his hand. "You are different, Jake Morrison. You are kind." Jake felt something shift between them. The distance that had been there since the beginning started to disappear. "You're not what I expected in a wife either." "What did you expect?" Jake smiled. "Well, I wasn't expecting a wife at all. Oh, but if I had been, I never would have imagined someone as amazing as you." Lyra smiled back, and Jake felt his heart skip a beat. She was beautiful when she smiled. Their moment was interrupted by Zara's voice. "Jake, I am detecting a large fleet approaching our position. 20 ships, all heavily armed." Jake and Lyra ran to the cockpit. On the main screen, they could see the ships approaching like a swarm of angry insects. At the center of the fleet was a massive battleship, bigger than anything Jake had ever seen. "That is Corax's flagship," Lyra whispered. "He has found us." Jake looked at the fleet, then at Lyra. "Can this ship outrun them?" "Not all of them. And Corax knows this ship's capabilities. He will be ready for us." X sat down in the pilot's seat and began preparing for what might be their final battle. "Then we don't run. We fight." Lyra stared at him. "There are 20 ships out there. We cannot win." Jake looked at her and smiled. "Maybe not. But humans have a saying. It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog." Lyra did not understand the saying, but she could see the determination in Jake's eyes. She moved to her control station and began activating the ship's weapons. "If we are going to fight," she said, "then we fight together." As the enemy fleet closed in, Jake felt something he had never experienced before. For the first time in his life, he was fighting for something more important than money or survival. He was fighting for love. The 20 ships of Corax's fleet spread out in a perfect circle around the Starwind. Jake could see the massive battleship at the center, its hull covered with weapons that could destroy a small moon. He had never felt so small and helpless in his life. A deep voice came through the communication system, speaking in the same musical language that Lyra used. The voice was cold and full of hate, and Jake could see Lyra shiver when she heard it. "What is he saying?" Jake asked. "He wants me to surrender," Lyra said, her voice barely above a whisper. He says, if I come aboard his ship, he will let you live." Jake felt anger rise in his chest. "Tell him no, Jake. You do not understand. Corax has killed millions of people. If I do not surrender, he will destroy this ship and then hunt down every human who has ever helped me." "I don't care," Jake said firmly. "We're in this together, remember?" Lyra looked at him with tears in her violet eyes. "You would die for me. Wide, I would rather die fighting beside you than live knowing I let you face him alone." Corax's voice came through the speakers again, louder and more demanding. Jake did not need a translation to understand the threat in his tone. "Tell him," Jake said to Lyra, "that if he wants you, he can come and take you." Lyra translated Jake's message, and they could hear angry shouts coming from the enemy fleet. Several ships began moving closer, their weapons charging up with deadly energy. "Zara," Jake called out, "what are our chances?" "Honestly, Jake, it's very bad. But this ship has one weapon that might help us. It is dangerous to use, and it might destroy us as well as them." "What kind of weapon?" "The ship can create a rift in space-time. It would pull all the ships in this area into a kind of whirlpool. Some might escape, but most would be destroyed." Jake looked at Lyra. "What do you think?" "It's our only chance," she said. "But Jake, the weapon requires 2 people to control it. One to pilot the ship, and one to channel the power through Asterian mental techniques. If we make even one mistake, we will all die. Can you do it? Lyra nodded. But I have never tried anything this powerful before. And you will have to fly the ship through the rift itself. One wrong move, and we will be torn apart. Jake smiled grimly. Well, I always wanted to try something impossible. The first enemy ships opened fire, and Jake threw the Starwind into a wild dive that took them under the attacking fleet. Laser blasts lit up the space around them like deadly fireworks. Jake's hands moved over the controls as if they had been flying this ship his whole life, spinning and turning through the storm of weapons fire. Lyra, whatever you're going to do, do it now, Jake shouted as more ships joined the attack. Lyra closed her eyes and placed her hands on a crystal panel that Jake had never noticed before. The crystal began to glow with soft blue light, and Jake could feel strange energy building up throughout the ship. I need you to fly us to the exact center of their formation, Lyra said, her voice different now, deeper and more powerful. The weapon will create the rift there, but we have to be in the right position, or it will not work. Jake pushed the engines to maximum power and headed straight for Korax's battleship. Enemy fire came at them from all directions, but somehow Jake managed to dodge every shot. He could feel the ship responding to his thoughts, as if Lyra's power was connecting him to the Starwind in ways he had never imagined. Almost there, Jake called out. The blue light from Lyra's crystal panel grew brighter, and Jake could see energy crackling along the ship's hull. Space itself seemed to bend around them, and the stars outside began to move in strange patterns. Now, Jake, activate the weapon, now. Jake pressed the firing control, and everything went white. When his vision cleared, Jake saw something that would stay with him for the rest of his life. A swirling whirlpool of twisted space had appeared in the center of Korax's fleet. Ships were being pulled into it like leaves in a hurricane. Some tried to escape, but the pull was too strong. One by one, they disappeared into the rift, crushed by forces beyond imagination. But Korax's battleship was fighting back. The massive ship fired everything it had at the rift, trying to close it with pure energy. Jake could see that it was working. The whirlpool was getting smaller. He's going to escape. Jake shouted. Not if I can help it, Lyra said. She pressed her hands harder against the crystal panel, and Jake could see that the effort was hurting her. Blood ran from her nose, and her whole body was shaking. Lyra, stop. You're killing yourself. I have to finish this. She gasped. If Korax escapes, he will never stop hunting us. Jake made a decision that surprised even him. He left the pilot seat and put his hands over Lyra's on the crystal panel. Immediately, he felt the power flowing through the ship, and it was like touching lightning. But together, they were stronger than either could be alone. The rift grew larger and more powerful, pulling Korax's battleship toward its center. Jake could hear the enemy generals screaming through the communication system as his ship was dragged into the swirling darkness. Then, suddenly, it was over. The rift collapsed with a sound like thunder, and they were alone in empty space. Round them floated the wreckage of a few ships that had been torn apart by the forces they had unleashed. Jake and Lyra collapsed to the floor, exhausted. They had won, but Jake felt like he had aged 10 years in the last few minutes. Is he dead? Jake asked. Lyra nodded weakly. Korax is gone. Okay. And so is most of his fleet. The survivors will not dare to hunt us now. Jake helped Lyra to her feet, and for the first time since he had found her, she leaned against him like she needed his strength. We did it, Jake said, hardly believing it was true. Yes, Lyra whispered. We did it together. They held each other in the quiet cockpit. Jake realized that somewhere in the middle of their impossible battle, he had fallen completely in love with the alien princess who had changed his life forever. 3 months after their battle with Corax, Jake and Lyra floated in the quiet darkness of deep space while the star wind repaired itself. The ship's amazing technology could fix almost any damage, but it took time. Jake did not mind waiting. These had been the best 3 months of his life. He and Lyra spent their days learning about each other. She taught him about Asterian culture, their connection to the energy that flowed through all living things, and their long history among the stars. Jake told her about Earth, about human dreams and hopes, and about the simple pleasures of his old life before he bought a cheap ship and found a princess. The more time they spent together, the more Jake realized that their marriage might have started because of alien law, but it was becoming something real. Lyra was brilliant and kind, brave and funny. When she laughed at his jokes, Jake felt like the richest man in the galaxy. One morning, Jake woke up to find Lyra standing by the main view screen, looking out at the stars with tears on her cheeks. "What's wrong?" he asked, moving to stand beside her. "I had a dream about my home," she said softly. "Sometimes I forget that everyone I knew is gone. When I wake up, for just a moment, I think I can go back to the way things were." Jake put his arm around her shoulders. "I'm sorry. I know how much you miss them." Lyra leaned against him. "You know what the strange thing is? In my dream, you were there too. You fit into my old life like you belonged there." "Maybe I would have," Jake said. "Maybe we would have met anyway, somehow." Lyra smiled up at him. "Do you really think so?" "I think," Jake said, "that some things are meant to happen, no matter how impossible they seem." Their quiet moment was interrupted by Zara's voice. "Jake, Lyra, I am receiving a transmission on old Asterian frequencies. Someone is trying to contact us." Jake and Lyra hurried to the cockpit. On the main screen, a face appeared that made Lyra gasp with joy. It was another Asterian, an older man with silver hair and kind eyes. "Princess Lyra," the man said in their musical language, "I am Commander Vel of the hidden colony on Sanctuary. We thought you were dead. We heard reports of someone using royal-class weapons against Corax's fleet. We dared to hope." Lyra spoke rapidly in Asterian, and Jake could hear the excitement in her voice, even though he did not understand the words. "He says there are over 10,000 Asterians living in secret on a world called Sanctuary," Lyra translated for Jake. "They have been hiding there since our home world was destroyed, waiting for a chance to rebuild our civilization." "That's wonderful," Jake said, and he meant it. But part of him wondered what this would mean for them. Would Lyra want to go back to being a princess among her own people? Commander Vel spoke again, and this time his words were directed at Jake. "Princess Lyra has told me about you, Jake Morrison. She says you saved her life and fought beside her against our greatest enemy. The Council of Survivors has voted to offer you something that has never been given to an outsider before." "What's that?" Jake asked. "It's full citizenship in the new Asterian nation, with all the rights and honors of nobility. You would be the first human to join our people as an equal." Jake stared at the screen in shock. "I don't know what to say." "Say you will come to Sanctuary," Lyra said, taking his hand. "Okay. Say you will help me rebuild my people's future. Okay?" Looked into her violet eyes and saw hope there, but also worry. She was afraid he would say no, afraid he would not want to leave his human life behind. "Of course I'll come," Jake said. "Wherever you go, I go. We're partners, remember?" The relief on Lyra's face was worth more to Jake than all the treasure in the galaxy. 2 weeks later, the star wind dropped out of hyperspace near a beautiful blue and green world that looked remarkably like Earth as they flew toward the planet's surface. Jake could see cities that seemed to grow out of the landscape itself, all curves and flowing lines that worked with nature instead of fighting against it. "Welcome to Sanctuary," Lyra said. "Welcome to your new home." The landing bay where they touched down was filled with Asterians, who had come to welcome their lost princess home. But before they met with her people, Lyra insisted on making one more stop. "I want to see your family first," she said. "I want to meet the people who made you who you are." So they flew to Earth, to the small farming colony where Jake's sister Lisa lived with her husband, Carl. Jake had been nervous about how his family would react to Lyra, but he should not have worried. Lisa took one look at Lyra and declared her the most beautiful woman in the galaxy. Carl was amazed by the star wind and spent hours asking Lyra about Asterian technology. When crop disease threatened to destroy the colony's harvest, Lyra used her knowledge of biological sciences to save their farm and every other farm in the sector. "I can see why Jake loves you," Lisa told Lyra on their last night on Earth. "You're not just beautiful, you're good. Your brother is good too," Lyra replied. "Atati taught me that love is not about power or duty. Dia is about choosing to stand beside someone no matter what happens." As the Starwind lifted off from Earth for the last time, heading toward their new life on Sanctuary, Jake reflected on how much his world had changed. 6 months ago, he had been a broke cargo hauler with a broken-down ship and no prospects. Now, he was married to an alien princess, owned the most advanced ship in the galaxy, and was about to become a noble in a civilization he had never heard of. "Any regrets?" Lyra asked, settling into the co-pilot seat beside him. Jake looked at her and smiled. "Only one. I regret that it took me so long to find you." "Well," Lyra said, laughing, "maybe next time you should buy cheap ships more often." As they jumped into hyperspace toward their new adventure, Jake realized that sometimes the best things in life really do come from the most unexpected places. He had bought a cheap ship and ended up with an alien wife. But more than that, he had found his purpose in the universe. Together, they were going to help build a better future for both their peoples. And Jake could not wait to see what impossible thing would happen next.